I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a chance. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set, to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred, or just worked on the side, or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
The NFL and college, they don't operate on the same timelines, right? UNLV's head coach just got, the Purdue job this morning, where I imagine, right, UNC probably needs to know from Bill.
And let's say it's late December, and we see 7, 8 teams open, and none of them want Bill, then Bill's got to make a decision. Does he want to be a college head coach?
Pro football today, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
A new week starts right here, right now, live on a Monday morning on the Early Line on SportsGrid and all across the SportsGrid network. That includes sportsgrid.com/watch, where you can find your favorite destination and consume everything all across the grid. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. We are here together for the next 3 hours up until 11 a.m. Eastern Time. A Monday, as you all well know by now, that we sit back in the armchair and look to a full Sunday slate around the National Football League. Week number 15 in the NFL. We only have 4 weeks remaining in this National Football League regular season. So if you are in that playoff chase, whether for a spot, a seed, whatever it may be, each and every week adds on that significance around the National Football League. So we'll look back on a marquee 4:25 p.m. Eastern time window yesterday on a Sunday. We'll set the stage for a Monday night doubleheader, the finale to end out Week 15. We'll talk Army-Navy. We'll talk Heisman Trophy. It is the first week of the first ever 12-team college football playoff in the history of the sport. There is so much to get to here, DRS, over these next 3 hours live on TEL.
Absolutely. A fantastic day yesterday. If you're watching pro football today, a lot of winners given out, which is certainly important. And then you had a lot of winners on the football field. Teams trying to take control of the division. Teams trying to make the playoffs. Teams fading out of the playoffs. Teams wanting that number 1 overall seed. And also, we're going to need the doc today because there was a major high ankle sprain that has to be dissected today for one Patrick Mahomes, who seems every year at this time to get a high ankle sprain and somehow fight it off and play the next week and win Super Bowls. And yes, we have a lot to go over, Ben, over these next 3 hours. Sometimes, as we say, just not enough. 3 hours, just not.
Yeah, Donnie Rightside is hoping for 4 on this Monday. We will deliver a great 3, though, for you here up until 11 a.m. Eastern. A significant Sunday in Week 15, as DRS alluded to. Significant injuries as well. But at stake on Sunday in the Motor City, the Detroit Lions and the Buffalo Bills. Perhaps a Super Bowl preview for the action we might see in February in New Orleans. If it was, what a high-scoring game we are in for. 90 combined points for the second consecutive week. the Bills playing the highest scoring game of the National Football League regular season as Buffalo snaps Detroit's 11-game win streak, goes into the Motor City, and wins 48-42 outright as a 2.5-point underdog. DRS, our total yesterday in Detroit, 54.5 in some spots, 55 in a hook, the highest number from an over-under perspective in this 2024 campaign, and it stood no chance. It flies over yesterday at Ford Field.
What an unbelievable football game to watch if you like props here, but also you're bewildered on what type of defense you're playing for the Buffalo Bills in back-to-back weeks. You should be 2-0 with that many points scored, but you are 1-1. But also, 48-42, it wasn't that close. The Buffalo Bills were the better team from start to finish in this game. And you saw last week where we said, what kind of, box score is this? My quarterback accounts for 6 total touchdowns, and we didn't win the football game. We'll flip it over this week to the Detroit Lions and tell me your quarterback threw 6 yards short of 500 yards, 5 touchdowns, and no interceptions, and you lost that game. What an unbelievable performance by the Buffalo Bills and the Detroit Lions on offense, but it was just the Buffalo Bills better when it counted the most yesterday. They improved to 11-3, and now the Detroit Lions in an absolute fight, not only in the conference, but in their own division record-wise.
Detroit's defense also accumulating a lot of significant injuries. Aleem McNeil, the anchor of their defensive line, now more than likely out for the remainder of this season. It's good we have the doc on today in hour 3 to look back on this Sunday. So Detroit now 12-2. Buffalo has won 8 of its last 9 games as well, 11-3. The Lions and the Eagles tied in the top spot in the NFC. Detroit would win the tiebreaker as of right now for a better conference win percentage, but Philly is closing quick. 10 straight victories with a win in the Keystone Clash yesterday in Philadelphia against the Pittsburgh Steelers. 27-13, the Birds triumph for a 10th consecutive week. DRS, they cover as a 5.5-point home favorite.
You knew that you were playing a good defense for the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The one area they might be susceptible is in the pass game, and the Philadelphia Eagles turned it on as Jalen Hurts went 25 of 32 for 290 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions, a passer rating of 123.5. Now, we'll review this game in just a moment, but here's what I got to say. Not very many teams can bully the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Philadelphia Eagles got the football back inside their own 5-yard line with over 10 minutes to go. Pittsburgh never touched the football again, which is a tough scene if you had the over in this game, figuring how many yards the Eagles had and how many chances they had to score. But that was as impressive as it gets. And shout out Mike Tomlin, who somehow punted right before that drive around midfield on 4th and 6 or 4th and 7, down 2 touchdowns, as if that was the smart move. It wasn't. The Eagles were the better team yesterday, and Nick Sirianni now a franchise best. 10 straight wins in the regular season. Nobody's ever done that before. How about St. Nick in Philadelphia?
And yet he can't control his own sideline. Always some drama for the Birds, even in winning ways. The Green Bay Packers on Sunday Night Football go to Seattle and snap the Seahawks' 4-game win streak. Green Bay wins outright comfortably as a 3-point road favorite, 30-13. They do cover. 2 passing touchdowns for Jordan Love. Geno Smith exits the game for Seattle, DRS, midway through the third quarter with an injury as well.
Yeah, lower leg injury there. Sam Howell comes in, can't really do too much there. Charbonnet did score a touchdown, which I love to see, but once again, all the way through, the Packers were the better team, even though it got a little bit closer in the final moments with a key 4th down stop for the defense of Seattle, but it just wasn't enough. The Green Bay Packers now with 10 wins. How about 3 teams in the NFC North with 3 games left to play? All of those teams have 10 wins or more. That's pretty crazy.
And with the loss for the Seahawks, snapping that 4-game win streak, it is the LA Rams currently in that top spot in the NFC West, a highly competitive division. The Kansas City Chiefs already winning the AFC West for a 9th consecutive season, winning rather comfortably yesterday in Cleveland, 21-7. They cover as a 4.5-point road favorite, but DRS, for the first time this year, a relatively easy win for the Chiefs, for one of the few times this year, but it did get uncomfortable midway through the fourth quarter. Patrick Mahomes exits with a high ankle sprain. His prognosis, week to week in Kansas City.
Yeah, so getting that first round bye might be massive for the Kansas City Chiefs, let alone he's got a couple tough games coming up. But we've seen him tough things out before, which includes re-aggravating that high ankle sprain just before halftime in a Super Bowl against the Eagles, and then coming out and playing like he didn't have an ankle sprain. One of the toughest individuals at that position in the NFL, it is Patrick Mahomes. But a nice win for them yesterday. Shout out my guy Jameis Winston and his 3.6 QBR rating on Sunday. That's the Jameson we know.
Benched in the second half for Donnie and Thompson Robinson. Quickly to college football. Goodness. Travis Hunter crowned a Heisman Trophy winner on Saturday night in New York City. The tightest Heisman race we have seen since 2009. Travis Hunter wins it. Boise State's Ashton Jeanty finishes runner-up.
I think Travis Hunter's girlfriend actually voted for Ashton Jeanty with some of these videos I'm actually seeing out here in the streets. So tough to have a hater in the own building there for him. But Travis Hunter, sensational football player, well-deserved. Seems like a great kid, by the way, too.
Never change, DRS. Never change. Army, Navy for the 125th time on Saturday in Landover. In the midshipmen, pull off the outright upset, dominating 31-13 outright as a 6.5-point dog behind 4 total touchdowns, 2 in the air for Navy's quarterback, Blake Horvath.
How about 3 total touchdown passes in that game, which is crazy. And by the way, coming home from pro football yesterday on the New Jersey Turnpike, 5 buses, all silver, with Army on the side, tons of police officers driving them back, but it was in a losing effort. Kind of tough.
Yeah, unfortunate for the Black Knights. LeBron James, after an interesting time away from the Lakers, back last night for L.A., and the Lakers beat the Grizzlies at home, 116-110. I'm sure that's all there is to this story. We look back on the Sunday slate around the NFL. Up next.
I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a chance. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred or just worked on the side or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
The NFL and college, they don't operate on the same timelines, right? UNLV's head coach just got, the Purdue job this morning, where I imagine, right, UNC probably needs to know from Bill.
And let's say it's late December, and we see 7, 8 teams open, and none of them want Bill. Then Bill's got to make a decision. Does he want to be a college head coach?
Pro football today, only on SportsGrid.
The 2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
A game of the year billing entering the Sunday slate in week number 15. A potential Super Bowl preview in Detroit between 2 franchises that are just hoping to play in a Super Bowl and contend for a Lombardi trophy. 2 of the 4 shortest prices to win Super Bowl 59 entering Sunday. All of that, the atmosphere in the Motor City between the Lions and the Bills. DRS, a game we expected to be close. The final score makes it look a little bit closer than it was. A game we expected to be high scoring with the highest total of the year at 54 and a hook. That's what we got between Buffalo and Detroit. The highest scoring game of this 2024 NFL regular season, 90 total points as Buffalo wins outright as a 2.5-point road underdog, 48-42 in Detroit, snapping that 11-game win streak for the Lions.
The MVP of the National Football League, you were seeing him once again on display yesterday with Josh Allen. We told you the week before, 6 combined touchdowns in an absolute shootout that they didn't even come away with a victory. Then they go on the road once again to maybe the best overall team in the NFL, which was the Detroit Lions. And Josh Allen goes 23 of 34 for 362, 2 touchdown passes, no interceptions, no sacks, and a QBR rating that rates at 100 at 95.3. And oh yeah, did we tell you, 11 carries for 68 yards and another 2 touchdowns. There is nothing Josh Allen can't do, and he was sensational yesterday. Back-to-back weeks where you should have been 2-0. You should have been cruising through that. But the fact of the matter is he's playing at that high level no matter where you go and who you play, Ben. Josh Allen is going to bring that heat this year. By far now, the best player in the NFL, which does include Lamar Jackson, had 5 touchdown passes yesterday. It doesn't matter. This is Josh Allen's world, and we're just living in it.
362 passing yards, 2 total passing scores. He had 2 more rushing touchdowns in 68 on the ground. Donnie, last week, 6 total touchdowns. First ever NFL player in history with 3 passing and 3 rushing scores in the same game. And he backs it up with 4 total touchdowns the week following. This Buffalo team, an offensive wagon as of this moment. 8 consecutive games scoring at least 30 points. 90 combined points in their last 2 outings. DRS, an end of an 11-game win streak for Detroit yesterday. We'll talk Lions in just a moment. Buffalo's won 8 of their last 9. They have covered in 7 of those 9. They have gone over in 7 of those 9. This Buffalo team, an offensive wagon at this moment. But as we say that, some questions on the defensive side of the football because they have also allowed 86 total points in their last 2 Sundays as well.
Yes, and it's a great problem to have, if that makes sense, because you say, you know what, our defense is going to give up points, but as long as Josh Allen, we have him, we'll win any game, anytime, anywhere, at any point spread or any sort of total that you need to get us through. But you are looking at a defense that under Sean McDermott over the past couple of years, Ben, Buffalo's calling card is they have a really good defense. They reset it last year that a lot of high expensive players that they couldn't afford, and now they sort of have that revamped secondary and defensive line. They just need to make enough stops at this point. And once you get to the playoffs, you're not going to have 40, 2 teams scoring 40 points in games here. It is going to settle down. They're a team that usually plays outdoors. They played in a dome, which lets you know how good Josh Allen can actually be when the conditions are perfect and or if they're in a snow globe, like you saw him dominate against the San Francisco 49ers. They can win every way which possible. Low-scoring game, high-scoring game, snow globe game, dome game. They do it all, and that's what was most impressive. But if we do, Ben, flip it back to Detroit, you look at some of the statistics, again, with Jared Goff, 494 and 5 touchdowns here. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 193. Laporta, 111. Gibbs, 83. They actually had 6 total players with at least 30 yards or more receiving, and they lost that game. And you're right to bring up that point because, again, Madden football, you could turn the injuries off. Oh, you got your injuries out of the way in the first week. No, you don't. Every single week, that defense is dropping like flies here, which eventually it can't just be next man up who can come in and perform at the same level as the starter in front of them. And it's starting to wear on them.
Yeah, it absolutely is, DRS. Aleem McNeil, yesterday, one of the best interior defensive linemen in the NFL, who missed the second half against Green Bay last week in concussion protocol, out with a knee injury they fear is season-ending. Carlton Davis, also probably out for the remainder of this season with a season-ending injury. One of their stars in the defensive backfield. As we know, no Aiden Hutchinson for a majority of this year. You are right, Donnie. Next man up is always going to be the mentality. But how many men can even step up in those spots for a Detroit team that you never want to get too hot, you never want to peak too early, you are not necessarily at your healthiest entering the postseason. The Lions still 12-2, tied for the top spot in the NFC alongside Philadelphia, but Detroit, based on the conference win percentage, earns that number 1 seed right now. Buffalo is not the 1 seed in the AFC, and yet with the huge victory yesterday in the Motor City, outright as an underdog, we have a new Super Bowl favorite. The Buffalo Bills at plus 420, the favorites to win the Lombardi Trophy this year in New Orleans. 30 cents now in front of the Lions, who entered the weekend with that shortest price to win Super Bowl 59.
Yeah, it's interesting where you're seeing some of these shift in prices, and also you're trying to comprehend what's going to happen over the final couple games. Because keep in mind, the Buffalo Bills are a few games back of the Kansas City Chiefs, but they do hold the tiebreaker. And you saw Patrick Mahomes with a high ankle sprain. There's a chance that he could miss not one game, but games themselves. And if you factor yourself into now getting that number 1 overall seed in the AFC and how good the Buffalo Bills are playing, I can see that here. The Detroit Lions, even with that loss yesterday, you still see them sitting at that plus 450 price because they still control home field advantage in the NFC. But coming off the Buffalo Bills with what they can do at the highest level in Josh Allen, there's no doubt about it that people are excited. It'll just be interesting to see if they can wrestle that number 1 overall seed away from Kansas City down the stretch.
So the Lions were the best cover team in the NFL for most of this year, most of the last 3.5 years. Now they have not covered as the favorite in 3 consecutive games. They had also gone under in 4 of their first 5 games with an over-under standing at 50-plus pregame. They have gone over in their last 2. And when you look at the Lions, still the favorites to win the NFC. There is still a lot to love about Detroit. Just a couple of defensive questions where things stand at this moment. The Chiefs are still the favorites to be the 1 seed in the AFC, but Buffalo the shortest price to win a conference crown. Plenty more from Sunday comes your way next.
Need help with your NFL picks? Get NFL insider knowledge from Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chow, with Sick Picks at Sports Injury Central. We reveal hidden injury advantages the sports books miss. Our doctors provide insights, and our algorithm tells you who to bet on. Spreads, player props, totals, in-game bets, Sick Picks covers it all. Get a free week now with promo code SportsGrid at SickScore.com.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season.
The Keystone Clash in the Commonwealth yesterday in the city of brotherly love between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Two teams that entered yesterday, each already with double-digit wins, each already in that top spot in their respective divisions. The Steelers in the AFC North, of course, the Birds in the NFC East. Donnie, there was some conversation entering our Week 15 Sunday slate. Which matchup between two interconference foes would be more likely a Super Bowl preview? In Detroit, the Lions or the Bills? The odds makers would tell you that. Two of the four best prices to win Super Bowl 59 entering now are two shortest favorites, or the Eagles and the Steelers, just to show you the stakes of those two games. Well, both teams in those winning spots do so rather comfortably. Buffalo as an outright underdog on the road. Philly as a home favorite, make it 10 straight for the Eagles, 27-13, easily covering as a 5.5-point home favorite. Total of 42.5 does somehow, some way stay under. Donnie, there was so much conversation this week, sparked by Brandon Graham, about the internal drama in that locker room between quarterback Jalen Hurts and number one wide receiver A.J. Brown. And despite a team with 10 consecutive victories, maybe some more drama for the Eagles on the sideline yesterday, but Philly wins to make it 10 straight. They now, at 12-2, are right alongside Detroit for what would be that one seed in the NFC.
It's pretty impressive what the Philadelphia Eagles have done. And based upon what you saw last year heading down the stretch, most people say, well, just changing coordinators, even though you got two really solid ones, isn't going to make all that big of a difference. The Philadelphia Eagles, far and away, and Ben, it's not even close now, the best defense in football. And quite frankly, yesterday, the best two defenses in football lined up yesterday, and one absolutely dominated the other one. Yes, George Pickens wasn't there for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I understand that. But the Philadelphia Eagles, I mean, from every level, off the defensive line, linebackers, and secondary. And keep in mind, this was a team that couldn't even get off the field first down, second down, third down, any down last year. They bring in Vic Fangio, and all of a sudden, everybody knows exactly what their assignment is. And also keep in mind, two rookies play in that secondary. Zach Bond was signed off the scrap heap for like $1 million from New Orleans, who was supposed to be a part-time special teams player and outside pass rusher. He might be the best middle linebacker in football. Jalen Carter absolutely turning it up, even though slapping guys in the head, which almost cost you a punt and giving the ball back to the Steelers, you live with that because he absolutely wrecks teams' entire game plans. 27-13 yesterday, built on we're going to bully the bully yesterday in our own building. I was so impressed to see that. Now, I said once again, once they beat the Baltimore Ravens, I thought the Eagles would wind up with home field advantage, and the Eagles had finally arrived on the scene. These games, the way they're winning, saying, we want to run the ball game, we can do that. Oh, you want us to pass the ball against you? We can do that as well. The most well-rounded team in the NFL, it's the Philadelphia Eagles.
And when you look at what their defense has done, DRS, in this 10-game win streak, 7 of those 10 under. Philly has covered in 7 of the 10 wins on this streak as well. Not the most prolific game for Saquon Barkley. We knew it was going to be difficult against a Steelers defense that ranks top 5 in terms of opponent rushing yards per game. 19 carries, only 65 yards for Saquon. That will hinder his chase of history in going after Eric Dickerson's record mark set back in the 80s. But the story offensively, DRS, as you well know, for Philadelphia entering yesterday, what would the passing attack for the Birds look like? 3 consecutive games with fewer than 180 yards for Jalen Hurts. That led to the drama entering this game on Sunday. Brandon Graham on his weekly radio show in Philly saying there was a strife in relationship between Hurts and his top target, A.J. Brown. It seems like the biggest wheel play in the history of sports to just say, based on the narrative, I know A.J. Brown is going to eat, but that's exactly what he did. Jalen Hurts, 290 yards yesterday, 3 total touchdowns. More yards thrown yesterday, DRS, at 290 than the previous 2 games for Hurts. That total was 226. And who was the biggest beneficiary? That would be A.J. Brown. 8 grabs, 110 yards, one of those 2 passing touchdowns from Jalen Hurts. Sometimes it is as simple as, hey, these guys are having a little bit of a beef, so let their play go out there and squash it.
Yeah, didn't you hear during the week, Brandon Graham got in front of the team and apologized, and then They had Jalen Hurts come up and also A.J. Brown and dap it up in front of the team to a standing ovation.
Yeah.
There were tears all over the auditorium, and that's the way they got down on Sunday. By the way, A.J. Brown, 8 catches. Devonta Smith, 11 catches in that game. 19 total completions to your top 2 guys here. That's how you spread the wealth and get everybody happy in the locker room. Now we need a Saquon Barkley to be upset this week. He didn't get the ball enough.
I think A.J. Brown is pissed that Devontae was targeted more. More on the early line next.
I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a chance. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
This is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, I guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this, I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text, put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe, like it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Live right here on this Monday morning on the early line on SportsGrid, sitting back in the armchair and looking back on a Sunday slate around the National Football League. DRS, there was no doubt. Yesterday, the game starting in the afternoon window, 4:25 p.m. Eastern, were on the marquee. We just talked about Buffalo winning outright in the Motor City, snapping the Lions' 11-game win streak. Philadelphia, now the longest active win streak in the NFL and the NFC, 10 in a row with a victory in the in-state showdown against the Steelers yesterday. Now Sunday Night Football, critical game for the NFC playoff picture in the Pacific Northwest. The Seattle Seahawks riding a 4-game win streak, hosting the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay booked as a full field goal favorite. By the time we reached kick last night in Seattle, and the line was spot on. Green Bay wins comfortably 30-13, snapping that 4-game win streak for the Hawks. A total of 47 and a hook does stay under. The Packers now have won 4 of their last 5. Green Bay, DRS, is a 10-4 football team. The Pack as a favorite this season, 5-4 ATS as they snap that win streak for Seattle, which because of it, the LA Rams now own that top spot within the NFC West.
Yeah, the Green Bay Packers, along with the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions, nobody's really going to want to show up and say, hey, can't wait to play that team from the NFC North. They are absolutely action-packed right now. Yeah. That was a great performance. The one thing that you usually worry about with Jordan Love at quarterback is can he just be efficient and lead you to a victory in a tough environment, which playing in front of the 12s in Seattle is. 20 of 27, 229, 2 touchdown passes, no interceptions, and a passer rating of 123.8. The Packers can beat anybody anywhere, and it's apparent. They did it last year when they showed up into the playoffs as a sort of surprise, crushing the Dallas Cowboys. But if we are looking here at the Seattle Seahawks and saying to ourselves, where do we go from here? Well, it's going to matter what Geno Smith is going to be able to come back and do. He's 15 of 19 for $149 before he went down with that injury. Not to say if he didn't get injured, they would have won the football game, but much better performance than what we saw out of Sam Howell's 5 for 14 and an interception in that game. They didn't get all that much on the ground. Why? Because they were down right away 14-0 in the first quarter. It's hard to crank up that ground game. But also, the NFC West, Ben, does anybody want to win that division? Is it just going to hang out there right up to the last week and teams are going to back their way into a division championship? That was a big game for the Seahawks. Now, granted, they weren't even favored to win that game. They were getting 2.5 points, and I actually liked Seattle to win that game. I thought it was one of those measuring stick games. You win 4 straight. Okay, let's win our 5th straight in a row and handle a really good Packers team, which they weren't able to do. So it's your best guess, along with mine, of who's actually going to win that NFC West now with that performance from the Seahawks and also maybe the health of Geno Smith moving forward.
And DRS, you had the right idea in terms of backing Seattle as an underdog because on the 4-game win streak, the Seahawks had won outright as the dog in all 4 victories. They were comfortable in that position. Green Bay as the favorite with Jordan Love had not been great. 4-4 ATS this season, even worse against the number a year ago. But a cover last night, now 5-4 against the number. In Jordan Love in his first 8 games this season, threw at least an interception in all 8. Now 4 consecutive games, DRS, without tossing a pick. 7 touchdowns in that span. 3 of the 4 games, multiple scores for Jordan Love. Both going to Romeo Doubs last night, who made a great shoestring grab later on in that second half to kind of ice away the margin for Green Bay. Seattle and Geno Smith, again, exiting the game midway through the third quarter with that injury, puts their outlook a little bit into question. And DRS, when you look at the outlook for both of these teams, last night, entering the game, had things just stayed the same around the NFC, this could have been a potential playoff preview. The Packers as the 6th seed, the Seahawks as the 3 seed, slightly ahead of the NFC South favorites right now, that being the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But now with the loss, Seattle is no longer the favorite, nor were they really entering the game, but certainly not in that top spot to win the NFC West. It is the LA Rams at a minus 145 price. The health questions around Geno Smith and the fact, DRS, the Rams have a better divisional mark than that of Seattle, have already won the direct head-to-head tiebreak in terms of their first matchup, and the Rams will host Seattle in week number 18 to end out the regular season.
Yeah, and you're taking a look at the finish of the season for Seattle after taking that loss to the Packers. Hey, you get the Vikings next, even though it's at home. That's going to be a tough one. And even though you say, oh, the Bears should be an easy one here, that's still rookie quarterback, sort of a coach trying to find his way around the NFL to see if he can be that non-interim coach and latch back on it. Also, the Windy City late in the season on December 26th is going to be windy, and it's probably going to be cold. And then you end the season on the road against the Rams. So it's tough. It's tough. Look, they got themselves back into the playoff picture with that nice 4-game win streak. But now it looks like it could quickly slip away at this point if they don't watch out, because there's no foregone conclusion, and you will be an underdog against the Vikings. And if Sam Howell has to be that starting quarterback, that's even worse at this point. So tough loss last night for the Seattle Seahawks in more ways than one.
People might be asking, why are you guys not talking about the Packers maybe making a run to the NFC North? They have not been eliminated from divisional contention, and they are 10-4, but they were swept by the Lions throughout the regular season. So 2-game difference is really 3. But I do think it speaks to the strength of the NFC North. The fact that we have 3 teams already with at least 10 wins, there is a chance, as Minnesota is a full touchdown favorite at home tonight against Chicago in one of our 2 games on this Monday Night Football finale to week number 15, that Minnesota could get to 12-2, putting a little heat on Detroit as well. The Lions still a comfortable minus 440 favorite. But I do want to ask you, DRS, about the NFC picture as a whole. When you look at the conference, the Lions are still the favorites at plus 190, 60 cents in front of the Eagles, plus 250. Then there's a $4 drop-off to Minnesota, at plus 650, $4.50 drop-off to the Packers at 7-1. Is it a 2-team race in the NFC, Or could a team like Green Bay make a charge to really contend for the conference crown?
No, it's not a two-team race. And you might say it would be if we had been a 3, 5, or 7-game series like other sports. We don't have that in the NFL. On any given Sunday, you're telling me that the Green Bay Packers pull up with a great game plan with Matt LaFleur and play good football, they can't knock the Eagles off in their own building? I'm not saying they can't do that because they probably can. Same thing with the Detroit Lions. You don't think that the Packers are going to beat the Lions or vice versa? The Minnesota Vikings can go into Philadelphia, even though they're a dome team playing as well as they are. This is not a two-team race. In the odds market, I still think the Detroit Lions at plus 190 does make sense because, again, 3 games left to play. They hold all the cards, and if they just do their damage, they can be the number 1 overall seed, which makes a big difference. But Detroit Lions, Philadelphia Eagles, Minnesota Vikings, and the Green Bay Packers, every one of those teams has a legitimate chance. Well, Donnie, what about the Buccaneers? Look, they're playing good football. I get it. I just think those 4 teams are a little bit better than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers heading into the playoffs on one of those we can win anywhere at any time type of games.
The Buccaneers 13-1 right now, fifth best price. Of course, a large drop-off from where Green Bay even is in that 4th spot. You nearly double the number to get to Tampa Bay. But the Buccaneers, Donnie, who won a game at home to start off the postseason last year against Philadelphia, are trending in a very positive direction right now, as we saw yesterday in L.A. The Bucs were trailing the Bolts 17-3 at the half. They never trailed again starting in the second. They scored all 27 points in the final 2 quarters to blow out the Chargers 40-17. Tampa winning outright as a 3-point road dog, a total of 45 and a hook. Skies over. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have now won 4 straight games at 8-6, Donnie. Not only are they the favorites to win the NFC South in front of Atlanta, but based on the overall records, Tampa would be the 3 seed if the season ended today. In front of the NFC West favorites, that would be the LA Rams.
I like what I'm seeing out of the Buccaneers. Now, we always knew Baker Mayfield can give you those efforts. 288, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception yesterday. He is a gunslinger. We know that. But how about now the Buccaneers committing to the ground game? As long as Bucky Irving is healthy, he goes for 15 for 117. As a team, 39 carries on the road against a Jim Harbaugh team for 223 yards. That's close to 6 yards per carry. If you run the football like that, you have a chance against anybody.
A little bit more on that game, the rest of the NFC playoff picture, everything from Sunday up next.
I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a challenge. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
You know, I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred or just worked on the side or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
The NFL and college, they don't operate on the same timelines, right? UNLV's head coach just got, the Purdue job this morning, where I imagine, right, UNC probably needs to know from Bill.
And let's say it's late December, and we see 7, 8 teams open, and none of them want Bill. Then Bill's got to make a decision. Does he want to be a college head coach?
Pro football today, only on SportsGrid.
The 2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
We review everything from a Sunday slate around the NFL, live on a Monday morning on the early line on SportsGrid. DRS, a statement win yesterday from the Buccaneers on the road in L.A. against the L.A. Chargers, 40-17, as Tampa was trailing at the break by 4 points, 17-3. They scored 27 straight, the only 27 points scored in the second half. There are many reasons to me that this win is significant for the Buccaneers, extending their advantage in the NFC South. You see the best of what Baker Mayfield can be, 288 yards, 4 touchdowns in the reemergence of the veteran Mike Evans, 159 yards and 2 TDs yesterday. His season best, now 251 yards away in the final 3 for Tampa to getting back to 1,000. That would be all 11 seasons Mike Evans has played in the National Football League. But for this Bucs defense, to do what they did to the Bolts offense yesterday, holding them scoreless in the second half, only 32 rushing yards for a Los Angeles team that wants to run the ball as best as anybody around the NFL. With the injuries that Tampa has defensively this year, it was a really big win for the Buccaneers. Again, outright as a 3-point underdog. Donnie, in the last 2 seasons, under Baker Mayfield, this Bucs team is now 14-7 against the spread as an underdog, with 9 outright victories in the last 2 seasons. Incredibly impressive stuff out of the Buccaneers yesterday, especially in that second half against the Chargers.
Absolutely. And also, when you take a look at a road game against a physical football team, and you were coming in with 20 to 25 players on the injury report, which included Bucky Irving, which included Mike Evans, and both of those guys were absolutely stellar. Now, you get what you get with the Chargers. They're still having those building blocks towards the future, and Justin Herbert seems like every other game is dealing with ankle injuries, arm injuries, shoulder injuries, rib injuries, and he got banged up again yesterday, which is why Taylor Heineke basically finished that game out in a blowout. But the one calling card we always knew that Jim Harbaugh loves is running the football. J.K. Dobbins looked like he was shot out of a cannon this year and fully back from his injuries. And, of course, as you know, he's out with injuries now, which leaves with just Gus Edwards, and that's not going to be enough. 11 carries for 32 yards for 2.9 yards per carry. That's not the Charger way. And also keep in mind, Loudon McConkey has been great. 5 catches, 58 yards, and a touchdown yesterday. But even he seems to be a game-time decision every week if he can go. They'll get it together in the future. But that was just a great performance by a Buccaneers team in a game they had to win on the road and so injured, going all the way from East Coast to West Coast. That was as great as a performance as you're going to get for the Buccaneers in 2024.
Game time decisions. Great show. Game time decision. Not a great injury designation each and every week around the National Football League. Tampa now nearly a $5 odds-on favorite, minus 490 to win the NFC South, despite the fact they were swept by the Falcons in the regular season. Atlanta on that 4-game skid. Tampa in pole position to win this division for a 4th consecutive year. For the Chargers, who told us their recipe of success before this year got started in year number 1 under Jim Harbaugh, with Greg Roman once again as his offensive coordinator, establish the run, play elite defense, take the onus off of Justin Herbert. They went under in 7 of their first 8, but now that things have changed a little bit, over in 4 of the last 6 for L.A. That was a critical game for 2 playoff contenders. Here was another one in Denver in that AFC playoff picture. The Broncos' biggest test, perhaps, to holding on to that final wild card spot entering Sunday was the team they were squaring off against at home in Indianapolis. And early on, it was not looking great for Denver. They do win 31-13. We'll talk about what it means for the Broncos as a favored side in just a moment. But, Donnie, this game changed on a dime very early on in that third quarter. Indy led 13-7 after picking off Bo Nix, who was intercepted by the Colts 3 times yesterday early in that third. Jonathan Taylor breaks off a 41-yard run that was a touchdown. Fantastic. Colts comfortably ahead by 2 scores. Oh, wait, a review? No way did JT drop the football before he broke the pylon like we see rookies make mistakes. Not for the veteran in Jonathan Taylor. Oh, he actually did. Fumbling the football at the goal line. It led to Indianapolis never scoring again, and Denver scoring 24 straight points to win big at home, 31-13. That also featured a pick six, if you will, really what was called a fumble return touchdown for Nick Benito as A.D. Mitchell, the rookie wideout, tried to throw a pass back to Anthony Richardson that was taken the other way to the house by Denver's defense. A fumbled chance is what we called that game for Indianapolis, literally and figuratively.
Absolutely. And now you look at the Denver Broncos at 9-5. They would have lost that game. Boy, they would have been reeling and let a lot of people in the door to try to come hunt them down for that playoff race. Same thing for the Indianapolis Colts. 6-8 now, probably not going to get you in. And also, you're right. This game was 13-7 with that quote-unquote touchdown run, which would have put you up 2 touchdowns, which really would have put the onus on Bo Nix, who was struggling in that game already with interceptions. But a clean fourth quarter where they won that quarter 21-0. And also, Anthony Richardson. What a specimen here, because I had a parlay, Ben. I needed one rushing touchdown for the Colts. He gets it right away on what he does well. Read option in the backfield. Once he gets going, nobody's tackling the kid. But from a quarterback position, he just doesn't play it very well. You see the spotlight plays, the shining star that he can be, and then you realize and go, 17 of 38, 2 interceptions, no touchdowns, 4.5 yards per passing attempt, and a passer rating of 36. You need consistency from the pocket if you want to win. And Ben, he's still young in his career, but I don't know if you're going to get that. It's like when we watch Will Levis. It's like something just doesn't connect on the football field with Will Levis, and it's not necessarily the same thing with Richardson. He just can't complete the simple passes you need to complete to be an effective starting quarterback.
DRS, that first game back for AR as the starter against the New York Jets, you felt great for him to put together the performance that he did. The last few weeks, it's been the same issues. A completion percentage sub 50% once again, 2 interceptions, 3 fumbles yesterday out of the Colts as well, 5 total turnovers, 8 total turnovers in the game. Denver now minus 1,100 to make the postseason. In fact, the Broncos at 9-5 are not the final team into the AFC playoff picture anymore. That would be the Bolts, based on the loss yesterday to the Buccaneers. The rest of the wild card chase around the AFC comes your way next.
I'm actually not even on a side today. And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a challenge. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred or just worked on the side or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
The NFL and college, they don't operate on the same timelines, right? UNLV's head coach just got, the Purdue job this morning, where I imagine, right, UNC probably needs to know from Bill.
And let's say it's late December, and we see 7, 8 teams open, and none of them want Bill. Then Bill's got to make a decision. Does he want to be a college head coach?
Pro football today, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Only 4 weeks remain in the National Football League regular season. After our 2 Monday Night Football games to end out Week 15, 4 becomes 3 critically important games up and down the docket on Sunday for those playoff pictures. And in the AFC, the Colts go down after a terrible fumble on the goal line by Jonathan Taylor before he broke the plane. Denver wins 31-13 at home. Quickly, DRS. The Broncos now 7-0 against the spread when booked as a favorite this year. Unblemished, covering by an average margin of nearly 2 touchdowns per game. So Denver in a much better spot to make the postseason. They sit as the 6th seed in the AFC playoff picture. Now into the 7, that would be the LA Chargers. Can anybody, the Colts, the Dolphins, challenge for a wild card spot? It does not seem likely. Elsewhere in the AFC South, Indianapolis loses, which opened the door for the Texans to clinch the AFC South for a second consecutive year. The Texans did that. This game was earlier in the day, so not open the door, but Houston wins, Indy loses. The AFC South goes to Houston. 20-12, the Texans win at home in a lower scoring game as a 2.5-point favorite. Houston covers. Total of 46.5 stays under. The Dolphins had been scoring a ton with the return of Tua Tagovailoa from injured reserve yesterday. Not a great day for Tua. 196 yards DRS and a touchdown. 3 interceptions, including 2 taken away by Derek Stingley Jr., one of the better young corners in the National Football League. Big day for that Texans defense out of the bye. They are now 9-5 in an AFC South champ for a second consecutive year.
Yeah, I liked Houston yesterday on the simple fact, look at the Dolphins, who were playing better football, but without both of their tackles, both left tackle and right tackle yesterday. And I said, you know what? The matchup that's going to be won is on that defensive versus offensive line for the Houston Texans. Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, 1.5 sacks, 1 sack, so 2.5 combined sacks between these two football players, which really stemmed the tide. And also, the one thing that Miami hasn't been able to do is really unleash their running game. Raheem Mostert's an afterthought at this point. Even yesterday, 6 carries for 8 yards. And then he took a Devon Achane, 12 for 41. That's not good enough on the road, and he had some big-time interceptions for Tua, which you could not throw in that game. And also, Tyreek Hill, 2 for 36, still battling that wrist injury. We'll see if he gets that surgery now sooner than later. And you say, well, where was the other wide receiver? Left early with an injury for Jalen Waddle, 2 targets, no catches, no yards yesterday. If your big-time players don't perform in these type of games, you're not going to win. Congratulations, Houston, even though we're still waiting for a breakout for C.J. Stroud. 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. You'll take that. $131 in the air, maybe not good enough. On the ground, Ogunbowale, 1 carry for 35 yards. You take that away. Joe Mixon's been bottled up sometime over the past couple weeks as well. 12 carries for 23 yards. You'll take the victory over Houston because it gives you the division, it gives you a home game, and it gets you into the playoffs. The Miami Dolphins look like they're about to be headed off into the non-postseason, as we like to say, retirement style.
Only 17 yards for Nico Collins, but both of the touchdowns that C.J. Stroud threw yesterday. Donnie, the Houston Texans winning the AFC South is no surprise, especially with how the division played out this year. Houston is the only team above 500 with a record of 2 games below 500 or better. They were the odds-on favorites entering the season with that offseason optimism. They win it by the end of Week 15. Great. But they're still in the 4 spot in terms of the seed lines around the AFC playoff picture. And the thought, Donnie, for Houston was not just win the AFC South, but maybe, just maybe, with all that they had done last year, overperforming on expectation and now having much greater expectation entering 2024, could they contend in the AFC with the likes of the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Bills? They are in position to do so. But do you really think Houston has a shot of making a deep playoff run?
I don't, but again, when you have a home playoff game in your own building, you're supposed to win those. Then the task gets a little bit taller. We're just not seeing the firepower because it was one of those things like if they would be winning games, Ben, 34-28, I'd actually feel a little bit better saying, okay, that defense isn't that good, but that means C.J. Stroud is cooking. And anytime you get a quarterback really in rhythm, you can beat anybody specifically of the talent level that he has. I just haven't seen it yet. Even coming into that game yesterday, his statistics between touchdowns and interceptions isn't that great, something we thought he'd take that major leap even from a great rookie rookie season, but I'm not going to downplay it. They got a solid head coach. You got a good game plan.
Yep.
They got a defense that can make plays. You just need your young quarterback to step up in the biggest moments here. We'll find out. But a player in the AFC, I don't think so. Can they win a playoff game? Absolutely.
11-1 is the price on Houston. There is nearly an $8 drop-off from the Bills, the Chiefs, the Ravens, to everybody else around the conference. We'll talk more about it when hour number 2 starts on the other side of the break in the significant injury update to Patrick Mahomes. That's next.